Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. That guy over there, that's Rob. Me, I'm Brian. Welcome. Thanks for joining us this week. It's the middle of the mid-season break, and man, it feels like we've been off forever already.
Is it just the middle? Have we at least hit the middle and we're on the way up now? Or
I
I don't even
don't
know
know.
where we are.
I
I'm
don't
just,
either.
oh my gosh. And nothing, nothing is going on in the world of F1. I mean, news and social today is the proper definition of scraping the barrel. I mean, we've almost gone through the barrel and we're scraping the floor that the barrel is sat on. It's that lean. I see
Oh,
you've been busy in the video vault though, so at least
I
we've got
have.
something there.
You can count on me.
And then after 300 years and 5,000 podcast episodes promising to look into this, we take a deep dive today into what is a non championship race.
I mean, I'm excited. Are you excited? Is everybody
I am
listening at
excited
home
because
excited? I hope y'all are excited.
they're probably not, but it will just be good to finally put this to bed that we have mentioned it many, many years. In fact, whenever I read out the stats when we do a preview of a race and we look at the repeat winners, I have to manually um, massage the figures to take away non-championship races that are highlighted in pink on Wikipedia. And every time it comes up, what is a non-championship race? And me and you look at each other and go, I, I don't know. They
I mean,
did them.
I mean, when we did the research, yes, it's still kind of what we thought they were, but we'll get into that in a little bit of
Yeah.
time.
And then still no race preview yet because, like Brian said, we're in the middle of the desert, not knowing which way civilization is. But
The good news
yeah,
is, though, next week, when people listen to the pod, we will have a Zandvoort preview.
will we?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The
Thank
end is in
God.
sight.
Sort of. It's
Well, it
not
is.
today.
If we can at least preview an episode that a race that at least feels like we're on our
Yeah.
way back to racetracks because it's been a bit rough, really. This one feels. I don't know if it's because we had the 3 week mini break, then like a race, and now we've got into another break. It just feels like we have been making up content so badly for so long now.
And on that note, everyone who
On that
didn't
note,
hang up the pod, let's keep moving. I want to know about non championship races. But first, the news.
the news. Right. When Mr. Horner got let go by Red Bull, we reported on this pokey little pod that he was still technically part of Red Bull because you can't just get rid of directors that easily. And he was still listed at Company's House in the UK as an official director of not just Red Bull Racing, but a number of them that he was kind of connected to. Well, no more. New filings at Company House now show that Horner has been officially terminated as director of 4 companies as part of the Red Bull setup over the last 48 hours, suggesting the company has agreed severance details with him. So I'm imagining severance details means a boatload of money, and maybe now he can go and hook up with whoever he wants to go buy a share in a race team.
Okay. Um, the
That's all
man
you
who
have
was
on that.
fired is now officially fired. They've fixed the glitch in Office
Well, not
Space
really
terms.
fired. You see, this is where I need to get to a position where when getting fired to me means being shown out the door and off you go. This isn't getting fired. This is getting a huge lump of money to say, just don't come back here again, please. And he goes, okay, I'll take all my cash and however many suitcases you can fit it in, and I'll go and enjoy.
Speaking of cash in suitcases, the F1 movie has become the highest grossing sports film of all time at the box office, surpassing the other well known sports film, Cars 2, at the top of the list.
How's that a sports
I'm
film?
reading the news here, man. I'm not making it. Um, so they crested over 570 million American dollars, which is fantastic. I still don't know how Cars 2 is considered a sports movie, but the good news is a third on the podium is Cars. So anything with a car is considered a sports movie, animated or otherwise, apparently.
Oh my gosh. And then, just as we thought we wouldn't have to pronounce his name again, and I'm going
We
to leave
have
it
to
to
have him
Brian
on.
because I can't.
We have to get this man on the pod. We talk about him far too often.
Every week it feels like he's in the news. So you say his name and then I'll say the story.
Nicholas Tumbazis.
I struggle with that one so badly. I don't know why. Anyway, they were talking about how Some people were putting it to him in an interview that it's not going to be the spectacle next year because the doom mongers are saying the cars are going to be so slow they're almost going to be the equivalent of this year's F2 cars. And he responded and said, yeah, they could initially be between 1 and 2.5 seconds a lap slower, which sounds insane. And his view is you'll get used to it quickly, though. There are differences in the field that can sum to kind of a second, and the driver will feel it. They'll understand that it's not as quick, but from the outside, you won't even know that these going around a second slower. And as much as the headline of 2 seconds slower, the 2026 cars, do you know what? If they do lap in 1 minute 16 versus 1 minute 14, if you blindfolded me and I had to look at the two, I probably couldn't tell you which one was the quicker car. I think he's probably right. I think this is just clickbait doom mongering.
I mean, could you really tell a difference between Latifi going around the track and Max going around the track in terms of their times?
Not their times, in terms of which
Relative,
ones actually went
yes,
round
but
the
if
track
right.
and which ones crashed into the wall, then I guess which one was Latifi.
I mean, there will be other changes, right? It's the regulations for 26 have focused a lot on sort of the chassis rewrites, the aero. So we're going to have active aero on the front and rear wings. We'll have two different configuration, one for the straights and another for corners, which will replace ground effects and DRS. So like that's wild to me. And so they're going to limit downforce and drag are being reduced to create better racing. The cars will be smaller and lighter, and as we already said, slower at first. And then the F1 power units currently get 15% of their energy from electrical power. This will be a 50-50 split next year. Yeah, I know I'm making the same face as you. So there will be a lot of these changes that we just described, which will impact the cars. I hope we get, like, how do I say this the right way? I feel as though the racing has improved since 21. Like, you couldn't follow in those old regs. The 22 regs, I feel like, improved the following. The air goes up higher. You can stay behind longer. You still you wear your tire and you got to find your shots. I'm hoping smaller, lighter, slightly slower, easier to follow cars result in even better racing. That's my hope, that it's not just a couple, teammates in similar power or a couple teams near each other, but that we'll see even more midfield and back marker racing because of these regs. So I'm going in glass half full.
I'm going in glass has been knocked over and now there's nothing left in it, empty.
What? Why? Because of the power?
I think next year's going to be terrible. I do, and I keep trying to get on board the hype train for it, but because it's so radically different, I just worry that there will be such a divergence of performance across the grid that the ones at the back will be really at the back, and that maybe even if hopefully not just one team nails it, but if say two teams nail it, but then they're a good 10, 15 seconds ahead of the midfield or a good lapping everybody at the back, I think we could get a really spread out field next year.
So
and then the only little crumb of optimism I've got for the overtaking is the one, in fact, it's on your story that you clipped out here, right? The big issue that a lot of people are forecasting is that on the straights, they're going to experience what's called clipping, which is when, say, electrical power has reached maximum deployment towards the end of the straight, and it will actually reduce power output, and as a result, top speed, which means cars will get slower towards the end of a straight, which means the car following, are they going to be able to do the dive bomb if they're lifting and harvesting for electric energy at the end of straights? The maybe flip side to that is a crumb of positivity is 50-50 power split with electric. They are saying that will give more torque and acceleration out of slow corners. So maybe you don't dive bomb into corners anymore. Maybe you drag people out of them. I don't know. I just worry it's such a change.
Yeah, I hear you.
Get screwed up.
So the negative part of my glass is the beginning of any new set of regs. We often do see more space between the teams who figured it out and those who didn't. The point is, at the end of the regs, the cars all come together, right? The performance sort of comes together as everyone maximizes that package, that design, that set of regulations. So like this year, we don't know who's going to win a lot of these races. Yes, McLaren is the favorite, but there are times where you go in, quali can jumble it up, and if Oscar or Lando aren't on it, you got Mercedes, Max, Ferrari all in the discussion. We've got a bunched up midfield. It's awesome to watch, but that's the end of the regs. So your concern is valid because at the beginning there could be more people nailing it, more people kind of in the midfield, more people at the back. And with such a big change in regulations, maybe it exacerbates those deltas. I don't know.
That's my Debbie Downer. That I think
I'll let you be the downer. I'll be the optimist.
hybrid was the last big one. We've had previous regs where we didn't get a team completely nailing it, and we had good racing right from the beginning of regs. So a change in regs doesn't necessarily mean a huge delta, but when it's a big change, it does. And the 2014 move to hybrid, and Mercedes nailed it. No one else did, like you say, and we saw big spread.
So
2022 regs, actually, we saw. Remember that was the year that Ferrari should have won it. Charles should have won
yes,
that title and screwed the pooch. So actually, we did have potential competitive. We just people didn't convert their potential into results, and then Red Bull kind of like really got it together and completely dominated. So we'll see. We'll see. I guess I'm waiting to see these things out on track and how much of this is just doom mongering from people that don't like to see the internal combustion engine minimized down to 50% and are just throwing.
I'll be glass
shade.
half full guy the rest of the time. Glass half full. Speaking of glasses and half full, and maybe the opposite, we loved the Ford Chris Harris Max Verstappen Mustang GTD video that we talked about a week or two ago. My friend Garrett, who has had Fords, just wanted me to remind me that Ford has issued 89 recalls so far in 2025. That is more than the next 5 automakers combined, and now sets the world record for most recalls in a year, and we're only 53% into the year. So as my friend Garrett would say, Ford, they circled the problem. Because, their badge is a circle, and they put the name in the middle. So anyway, that's for Garrett. And then, Rob, you have one last news piece.
Well, news / pretending we're famous because we spoke with
we are
official. Okay, we are famous, yeah. It's the off season. The admins of the social media accounts of the big teams are bored, as you can tell, because we actually got interaction. They put out a post. Mercedes AMG F1 team put out a post. Can you answer? Well, it was what do you doing during the off season, and I kind of sent some back saying desperately trying to come up with content to fill an episode because there's nothing to talk about. So they came back and said, well, we know what you can do. You can answer these questions for us. Yes, we're now interviewing you. Name your favorite F1 race of all time, your favorite Mercedes car ever. So obviously Mercedes AMG want us to talk about Mercedes. Your favorite racetrack ever, best corner on the F1 calendar, and your favorite F1 admin account on Threads. So that's obviously Mercedes because you've engaged with us. And I put a quick answer off the top of my head to some of them, and they came back and said, we need you to put the full answers on your next episode. So here it is. We're going to answer these, me and Brian, and then I'm going to tag Mercedes and expect them to listen. And I'm sure Toto, George, Valtteri, Kimi, they'll be chuckling listening to this. So, hey, guys.
Thanks for tuning in.
So, favorite F1 race of all time? Because you might not have prepped for this, so do you have one that sticks out in your head?
Now since I didn't prep, I have to remember the race clearly, so I can't go back more than 5 years because I can't remember things beyond that.
I just put mine was while you think for a second. It's not even the best race. There's better races I can pick, but for a moment I still remember punching the air and being so happy because I knew Paul on the inside. As Jenson Button secured the title in Brazil 2009. I got more excited than that for some of Lewis's titles because Brawn was just such an epic, ridiculous story of underdogs coming good that I may have shed a tear at the end of that race. It was,
I'm gonna say on brand from our track ranking last week, Bahrain 2020.
Of course.
I love
the short, was it?
No.
Oh.
The short was the one when Mercedes had the little problem with the pit stops and the double stacking. So of course not that one, Mercedes admin. But I just loved the turn one situation where we lost so much of the leaders, 2 or 3 of the leaders, and then Checo was last after that and then won his first ever race, and he was able to keep a seat because of that. And I think Lance was third, and so Racing Point had 2 on the podium. It was wild, and it was COVID, and it was like a time when the races meant so much to some of us who really didn't have the world going in the right direction. So I know it sounds dumb, but I'm going to say Bahrain 20. Off the top of my head. There's others. If I thought about it a little longer, I would have better, but that's what I'm going to say.
Okay. And then favorite Mercedes car.
My 2012 C63 AMG Edition 1.
Perfect. Favorite racetrack and why? Well, actually, that one we actually answered, and I
We
said
did.
we were going to record an episode on that. It said Silverstone or Brazil, and we
They
couldn't
tied.
pick, so we won't. It's one of those two.
I think we said if we had to break the tie, it was Silverstone, but we both agree they're both in our hearts at number one.
Yeah, and then best corner on the F1 calendar. And I said, I've just always had a soft spot for the hairpin in Canada. It's not always the most exciting corner, but lots of people run wide. I love the view of it. That or maybe the hairpin in Monaco. In, I just, I don't know. Something about a hairpin, and I've always loved the Canadian hairpin and watching them come out of that and drag race out if someone messes up that corner.
That's a good one. I like turn one in Shanghai. Just
Okay,
the
I thought you were going back to Bahrain for a minute there. I
no
was going to hang up.
the big round sweeper. And there's always so much carnage. So I'm going China turn one.
China turn one or hairpin in Canada. So there you
Yeah.
go, Mercedes admin. We answered your questions. I will now tag you in this episode, and we're expecting a phone call from Toto to say how much he appreciated it. So thanks very much.
I have it.
Right,
I have it printed out.
All right. Now that Toto's in the video vault, or let's see, he wants to be in the video vault. Let's open it. So Rob's right. I did have a little time to watch some videos this week. I was hypothetically on vacation the whole week, which I then had to cancel, and then I was hypothetically on vacation Friday, which I was on calls with legal for most of the time. So I didn't get as much time to watch stuff as I should have. But friend of the show, and Mercedes, if you're still listening,
This is Valtteri Bottas, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
there was a video of his new car. Valtteri Bottas and his new Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale, 3 million euros in Monaco, on the, and I'm not making this up, Like a G channel. Yeah. Their video's 10 minutes. Do not watch the whole 10 minutes because what it is it's car watching, just observing cars in Monaco. The first 3 or 4 minutes are Valtteri. That's the part you need to watch. In his new 3 million euro Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale, which looks like a great car, looks phenomenal. I heard a rumor through the grapevine, he's got an AMG 1. So I don't know if he'll be keeping both, but we'll find out. So anyway, I was excited to see this new Alfa Romeo. Did you get a chance to watch these couple minutes, Rob, or no?
No, I just saw the Instagram reel that I think took a snippet from it, and I was just a little bit confused that it's not very on brand, is it? Shouldn't he be getting like a new Mercedes, given he's the reserve driver there?
Well, he already has a Mercedes 1, so
Yeah, but he can get a Mercedes too.
The Mystery Track Challenge, Grill the Grid 2025, Episode 2, Formula One channel, 17 minutes. This is the follow-up, and I love that Formula One does this. They get these Grill the Grids recorded before the season starts and drop some during the mid-season break. I'm trying not to call it the summer break because that's hemisphere favoritism. It's winter break for some people, but that's okay.
I'm filing that under Brian Overthinks again. Everyone in the world
I got
calls it
you
the
back,
summer break.
Australia. I know the Australians are listening like, yeah. And so the Mystery Track Challenge, Grill the Grid, it's the follow-up to the Face Mash Challenge. It was good. They zoom in on photos from around tracks, and for the first time, I watch these things at home with the cameras not running on me, and I'm just sitting there on my lazy boy eating Cheetos and got Cheeto dust all over my face, and I'm yelling out the answers like, come on, it's obvious. This one was hard. This one got me a lot.
I do feel, I meant to say it last week when we did the Face Mashup Challenge, that I do feel a bit sad that some people will have been filmed taking part in these, and
then
then
cut out.
we're never going to see them. They've just been cut because Yuka's wearing most likely the wrong overalls, so they don't want to include him wearing the Racing Bulls one. Jack Doohan probably took part in all of these and has been binned. Someone in the editing room has gone, minutes 3:52 through to 4:12. Cut that section out. It's like we're all adults. We can understand that they may have been racing for different teams or they got dropped or whatever. Like, I would have just liked to have seen the full footage in these of everybody that took part at the beginning. They earned their seat in F1, therefore they earned their moment in Grill the Grid. Just keep them in. None of us are going to care.
Or drop a off the editing room floor with like Nick DeVries and other people in it. Okay, that was good. I do recommend it. That was a highlight.
Some of them, like you said, that were really hard. I was
Really
like,
hard.
That's not even a racetrack. They've just thrown in a curveball here. That's not even from one.
But I
And
will
then
say there
zoom
was
out,
someone
you'd
that
go, "Ooh,
yeah.
yeah, okay, it is."
We asked Verstappen to drive NASCAR Team Trackhouse, 7 minutes. This is so good, but you gotta want it. So Trackhouse is a NASCAR team here in the States. I almost started the podcast with a, "Hey now, how y'all doing? This is the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading NASCAR podcast. Welcome, thanks for joining us. I'm Brian. I can't understand that other fella. He's got an accent. I think his name's Rob." But I didn't for this. I love this. I watched it twice. So they basically they bring all the Red Bull branded vehicles, motorcycles, cars, off-road vehicles, whatever, and they do a variety of things. They do a drag race, which is fun to watch, but it was neat. And the highlight, according to the title, is when Max Verstappen walked by the driver whose name I don't know of the NASCAR car, and the driver's like leaning on it. He goes, "Hey, Max," and Max gives him a fist bump. "How are you, buddy?" I don't think Max knew his name either. And he says, the guy goes, "Do you want to ride in this?" And you could actually see Max stop walking and say, "Yeah, I really do." But he's like, I can't. But you could see Max is like, "Oh, I haven't driven a NASCAR in a while. Let me do that for a bit here." I don't know if he ever has. But anyway, that was a fun little video. And then the last one, and this is a
Wait,
couple...
hang on, sorry. Before, so he doesn't drive it?
No, he drives his car. He drives an old Red Bull F1 car.
The headline of the video is accurate. We asked Verstappen to drive NASCAR.
Yeah.
But the answer to that question is, but he doesn't.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, really, Team Trackhouse? They just put Verstappen's name in knowing it would bring butts and seats because he just walks by. Anyway. And they do show him doing donuts, but that's okay. So then Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton play retro video games, Ferrari Channel, 5 minutes. This is a couple days old, right? This was like Friday of last week, but it's my vault and it's my rules, and I'm including it even though I missed it. The reason I'm including it is if you haven't seen it, I do recommend it because it gives very serious big brother, little brother vibes. If you watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you want to watch it to see what I'm talking about, go watch it. And if you don't care, well, I'm closing the vault. But trust me on this. Then you can figure out which one is which. It was a little weird at one point.
Right. Okay. Into the meat of the episode, which is the tale of non-championship races. So, I'm going to use this. I'm unashamedly going to say that I took some research and then dropped it into ChatGPT and said, "Write me a podcast synopsis of this subject," and dropped my research of it in, and here we go. And its opening hook that it gave me, I quite like, which is, imagine a Formula One race, the same cars, the same dramas, same drivers, but at the end, no points given out, no standing change, just glory and maybe a big check. And that is the world of non-championship races. It's a part of F1 history that has almost vanished. So every time, like I said at the beginning, every time we look at the race previews and do the stats, and we look at the previous winners, I have to spend time editing out, especially from the constructors, a whole heap of teams that Brian and I have never heard of.
Or drivers.
They all won races in the early 50s, 60s, 70s at races designated non-championship races. And we've constantly asked ourselves, what the heck are these? Why did they exist? Why were there so many of them, and why don't they exist anymore? So that's what we're going to dive into. And really, the headline of it, which probably ruins the whole thing, you don't need to listen to the rest of it, is they were races run under F1 official technical regulations. They just weren't part of the F1 calendar. So when some people say, "Oh yeah, there used to be those non-championship races back in the 30s," no, there weren't. There were Grand Prix run back then.
Right.
But they physically couldn't be a non-championship F1 race because the F1 regs didn't kick in until 19... I think there's a debate as to whether they were 48, 49, or 50. But
Correct.
The first official race is 1950, and being as F1 themselves are celebrating 75 years this year, we'll stick with 1950.
You're right. There are, if you go into the stats on non-championship races, they start before 50, and they list some of them out. But I'm with you. If we're going to say that, F1 really started awarding points the way they do for a championship in 50, then I'm going to say the same as you. That's where the non-championships really started. So I know there were things prior. Feel free to disagree with us. Let us know in the comments. But to me, I'm with you. I think the technical regulations and the point scoring for a goal of a championship, for World Drivers' Championship first, constructors came later. For those, 50, right, for drivers. So we're saying 50 is when they started. And the reason is there were so few races. There were 7, 8 races a year. And there was a desire by a short calendar, drivers who wanted to drive more, teams wanted to race to test cars, earn money, give rookies and others experience, promoters, circuits wanted the events. So these non-championship races sprung up, and there were a lot of them. In 1950 alone, there were 15 non-championship races. 15! There were 7 or 8 actual races. Yeah, it's wild. And so at the time, you had a lot of the real, I'm doing air quotes, F1 drivers in the non-championship races as well. Now, Rob kind of hinted at this, but they moved up and down in terms of how many you had a year. However, by the mid 60s, you really had few. So just being totally honest, right? There were still some, but in 1950s, here's through that decade, you had 15, 13, 30, 23, 17, 10, 10, 6, 5. So you peaked at 30 in 1952 and 3. And then in the 60s, you had 6 in 1960, 25 in 61. Yeah, 20 in 62. Jim Clark was in a lot of these. He won a lot of these. And we'll get into that more in a second. But then it started tailing down a little. 14, 8, 6, 4, 6, 3, 4. The 70s saw a very much kind of a flat line in terms of amount of races. Why? To Rob's point earlier, we started seeing a bigger calendar. We saw a bigger calendar in the 60s. We saw a lot bigger calendar in the 70s of regular points-giving races. Therefore, less opportunities to run these non-championship races. In the 70s, we had 3, 8, 6, and at this point in 1973, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2. And then there were 3 races in total in the 80s, all at one a year. And we'll get into 83, the last one, later on. But so what you'll see is, again, when you have a lot of vacant calendar space, especially in the 50s and early 60s, you would see a lot of non-championship races. As the F1 points-giving calendar grew, the non-championship races shrunk.
Yeah, and I was kind of looking at this, and they was, with the reliability of the cars back then, it was a big deal to basically thrash your new developments around in one of the non-championship races, just to see if your new parts were going to work, what your reliability was going to be like. So they essentially served almost as in-season testing. You were able to test for more races than you were actually competing in for championship points. Like you said, 30 races practice to 7 races championship is insane, but in a bizarre way, actually mirrors real life sport preparation. If you think about the amount of training that 100 meters hurdlist puts in versus the 15 seconds on the day in the Olympics, you do way more practices than you do real, right? So it kind of made sense. Now we've got to such a point where cars are so reliable, calendar is so big that you just, well, we'll get there later about whether or not we think you could squeeze these in and whether they should make a comeback. But I was just looking at some of the tracks that were involved in the early days. Now, if you know anything about some of these places, it's some famous old names. You can cover the US ones in a second, Brian. I'll do kind of the UK ones. But Silverstone was used, but Goodwood was used. Alton Park was used. Brands Hatch. Brands Hatch is like anybody that played any of the touring car games on the PlayStation, or I'm not even sure which other ones Brands Hatch might have been on. It might have been on a Gran Turismo, I'm not sure. But throwing cars around Brands Hatch was amazing. So it was just like some real, and Madrid had one. Where else did we go? Come on, you had the US ones on here somewhere.
Well, what I want to talk about is what isn't actually a US one. Everyone always thinks, or not everyone, but a lot of people often think that the Indy 500 is a non-championship event. That's wrong. And so we've actually had people on who have said that to us, and we're like, oh yeah, non-championship events. Yeah, the Indy, okay, good, because we didn't know. And so as we've looked at it and learned more, the Indy 500 was on it was on the regular points-giving race calendar from 1950 to 1960, inclusive of 60, so 11 years. And the Indy 500 was a race, and it was part of the F1 calendar. It was
Apparently they didn't used
replaced.
to send. Most of the teams didn't send
They didn't always send their
drivers or.
right. Correct. They
Because
didn't
I
always.
believe
Send,
it wasn't fully
it wasn't
F1
exclusive to
spec,
Formula
or,
One.
It was. That's right. It wasn't exclusively Formula One.
But it was
so
part of the
kind
calendar, and they gave
Yeah.
points. And it was replaced in '61 by Watkins Glen. Watkins Glen, another amazing track, like you talk about Brands Hatch, and that's where they had the Race of Champions, which we'll get to. They had the last one in '83. But back to the U.S., Watkins Glen was on the calendar. I didn't know this for 17 or 16 years. I didn't know it was that long. I knew they hosted some, but they closed having hosted 20 races because there was then 2 races at a time in the U.S. in 78, 79, and 80. So when people moan, whinge, complain, whatever the word would be, about the U.S. having had 2 and now 3 races, in the friggin' 70s we had 2 races when it was like impossible to travel around on these planes. They came over for Watkins Glen and other races. But again, these are championship races, and I know we're talking non-championship. I just wanted to clear up the Indy 500. It was a championship points-giving race for 11 years on the calendar, and they ended up running, when you count the later ones, they ran a total of 19 races at Indy for points.
Oh, well, there you go. So in a feature dedicated to non-championship races, you've just spent 10 minutes talking about the Indy that was on the championship. Is that basically what we can summarize that as?
Well, it wasn't 10 minutes, but yes, 11 minutes.
What I really like is that it was a complete almost free-for-all, the non-championships. It's like you or I could turn up with a car, and as long as it meant it kind of met the specs of being able to enter,
Which was a bathtub. Just give us a bathtub with a lap belt and a wheel. They're like, that'll count.
Yeah, so they said it frequently mixed F1 drivers with private teams or even F2 cars if the grid numbers were low. So basically, not enough people turned up. They went, yeah, we know we've kind of got this spec you're supposed to meet, but it's not really going to put on much of a show. So what's that? You want to bring your road car along? Yeah, go on, have at it. In you come. Gates are open. It's almost like it was just a free for all that anybody could take part if they needed to fill this up. Because again, they're just trying to give track time. Let people kind of test their cars out. And they really also, this was marketing. F1 was in its early years. They're trying to drum up support. They're trying to basically take this all over the place to just get interest, get eyeballs on the sport and try to grow the attendances in the actual main events, which, looking at where we are now, I don't think they did too bad a job in the early 50s starting to lay the groundwork for building
I don't
the
think
sport.
they need to drum up any more attendance. The waiting list for tickets at too many races is too high.
Yeah, but you were talking earlier about like the names that took part, and Jim Clark is one of the big ones that just seemed to. This guy, because we did a Vale's Tales on Jim Clark.
Yes.
He just wanted to race,
and he
don't
was
think he cared what he was
great
racing
at it, in anything.
Yeah, it was literally. What are you doing this weekend? Well, I don't have an official race on the championship, so what's open? What can I be doing? Lawnmower racing? Yeah, I'm in.
I'd be willing to bet he'd whoop you, even if you got 2 of the lawnmower you have. And Jim Clark were alive and in his prime, you put him on the other mower, he'd lap you by like two turns around your house.
100%. I mean, this guy could just drive anything. He just drove for the love of driving. So
he did, but it was, to your point though, like the names were big, right? Jim Clark, Jack Brabham, Graham Hill. If you look at some of the people who won the most non-championship races, Jim Clark, and again I'll talk a little about the championship ones too as we kind of compare. Jim Clark won 25 F1 Grand Prix, 19 non-championship races as well. Juan Manuel Fangio won 24 F1 Grand Prix and 8 non-championship races. Sir Sterling Moss, 16 F1 Grand Prix and 19 non-championship F1 races. Jack Brabham, 14 F1 Grand Prix and 16 non-championship F1 races. So it wasn't as though you just got some rich guy and his toy car out there. You got real drivers out there with real teams, but you also got a lot of rich guys with their toy cars out there. And there were races where you would have the B list and the C list. You'd have, 8 or 9 cars sometimes. There were times when they ran races on the same day. Not 2 non-championship races on the same day in different countries. And how do you do that? I mean, could you imagine if somehow F1 decided, welcome to the Miami Grand Prix on ESPN1, and if you turn on ESPN2, you can watch Monaco. Like, what? No. But again,
Which one are you racing in this weekend?
exactly. Like Lando goes to one, Oscar goes to the other. And again, I know these are non-championships, so we get the difference. But they would run them, one in France and one in Italy, on the same friggin' day. And there were not a lot of same-day non-championships, but with the number I described before, there were definitely more than one or two. It was wild to see the dates, and they'd be the same. So you've got amazing drivers, but then, yes, there were a lot of people out there who can claim their grandfather drove in an F1 race, and it was like it was in someone's backyard, and it was in your town, and you went out with a car and you ran in it. And so sometimes you got some C-listers in there, but it was just so cool to like understand that at this time of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you had all these opportunities for young drivers to show talent, people to improve their cars, test things on them, and that some of the best would go out there too.
Yeah, I was. I think you're right because the thing about like the grandfathers, people saying their grandfathers took part. Did you see that in Matt Bishop's article? That
100%.
Yeah, it was. So I sent a message to friend of the show Matt Bishop that came on once upon a time and regaled us with some of the best storytelling that I've ever heard. I could have just sat and listened to that guy talk for days. But anyway, he's one historian as well on the side. So I sent him a message on Twitter or whatever it is these days and said, we're going to do an episode on non-championship races. Have you got any good source material you could point us in the direction of? Because I know you everything in history in your head. And he came back and said, I know this sounds like a little bit of an ego, he said, but the best thing I can point you to is an article I wrote.
Well, do you know when we decided to do this, I went out and did some googling. And as I'm googling around the internet, I'm looking around and I found the same article without him having told us yet. So I didn't even read the byline. I didn't know it was Matt. And I'm gonna steal one more of Matt's stories here towards the end. But I read the whole darn thing, didn't know it was Matt, and then I moved on and I read a bunch of other articles, and then obviously Wikipedia just to check, but then the F1 stats where I got all the different things on the numbers of races and who won what. But so I didn't even know it was Matt. How funny is that? It was my favorite article about it, my favorite information. Friend of the show, didn't even know it was his, and then when he pointed it out, I'm like, oh, I read this.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of saying that, it still gets classified as an F1 win. It's just a non-championship F1 win because you took part in a race that was run under F1 specs. So if you won a non-championship race, you can still say that you are an F1 winner. And it's just in the bit I was kind of reading his article was though that there were just some said, what is it? An F1 win is an F1 win. However, the 1950 race in Gamston cannot be considered a classic for only 3 drivers took part.
3.
It's like no, for only 3 other drivers. Sorry, as well as
the podium, yeah.
As well as the guy that won it, right? So
yeah.
four in total. And basically, he was the only finisher amongst the 4 who started. So 4 cars started, 3 others bombed out. He could have just turned around and reversed his way around the entire track, but it doesn't matter. He can still say so that he has an F1 win. So that was, who was that who won that? I can't find his first name. Mr. Hampshire. I'm going to call him.
Mr. Hampshire.
Mr. Hampshire can claim.
I believe his name is New. First name
an
is New.
F1 winner. I'm going to find it now. David Hampshire. There we go. Found it.
Oh, I liked New better than that.
No, David Hampshire.
David Hampshire, shout out, and his family. But Matt pointed out one other thing in his amazing article that I wanted to highlight. The Race of Champions, right? So that was sprinkled throughout, the non-championship events. And it just got better and better. It was the last non-championship F1 race. Again, they had them yearly. But the last one was in 83, and that was the last non-championship race, won by K.K. Rosberg. So, first of all, that's an amazing name to start with. 40 laps, 13 cars. And the reason I wanted to highlight this is second place was America's IndyCar driver, Danny Sullivan, who I loved as a kid. When I was young, I was more of an IndyCar fan because it was on TV. Like we've talked about this. When I saw F1 highlights, I thought it was cool, but I couldn't really see it. And I didn't know how to watch it as a kid. So I watched Indy all the time. And Danny Sullivan was my guy. And like my cousin once dated a girl who knew Danny Sullivan. I'm not making that up. And so like it reinforced for me that he was the coolest because he knew someone that my cousin dated. Anyway, and so he finished second. And according to Matt Bishop, he was hampered with a stomach issue because he had too much beer and curry the night before. So
Finished just 0.49 seconds behind Kiki Rosberg.
that's right. I mean, that's amazing. And then Alan Jones was third, so we got an amazing podium. And then
wait, you're skirting over this. I need to drill into this. 0.49 seconds behind. We've all been out. We've all had the beers. We've all had the curries. I'm not sure I could be throwing my body around a racetrack and hold on to finish 0.49 seconds behind the winner. I mean, that is kudos because
but
no way.
You're also
no
not.
way I could be.
Yeah, don't compare yourself to Danny Sullivan.
Well, I'm not, but I'm just saying we've all been there.
Yeah.
That is a heroic effort to finish second.
Totally.
On the beer and curries.
And Alan Jones on the podium. And then the DNFs in that race, Rene Arnoux, John Watson, and a little gentleman named Nigel Mansell as well. I mean, these were serious people in serious cars showing up to race at Brands Hatch. And that was the last one. And as Matt Bishop put in the article, he actually knew the race was happening, and he tried to get off work to get there, and his boss wouldn't let him. So he missed seeing the last ever F1 non-championship race. But, I mean, it's just amazing. Crowd favorites, like you said, Madrid, Goodwood. They had the international race at Silverstone. I almost said it right. I don't know what the hell happened in my brain today. But yeah, it sounds amazing. The drivers are amazing. But then I think what started happening, and Rob, I'd like your thoughts, because it's kind of up to a lot of people's perspective on why it really ended. The calendar filled. The teams had preseason testing. They had enough time to test, and costs were getting higher. And so with a full calendar, your team effectively committed to racing, the 16 races or 17 or 18 races that were there at the time. There wasn't the gap in the calendar to fill it. There wasn't the need to do testing to fill it. And it cost money to bring your good cars to run them now because they're getting more and more expensive. And so that's why I think we saw into the mid-60s through the 70s, that decrease from double digits to single digits to low single digits, non-championships.
It's also, I think, going to be the good old tale of supply and demand, which is as the sport gets bigger and the calendar gets bigger, there are now more bona fide F1 championship events where the promoters are going to be able to give more prize money and attract more spectators and charge more ticket
them
prices.
more money.
And those start becoming the big events. So when back in the day, if you had 30 non-championships and 7 championships, there was still a lot of real estate to grab money off the Joe Public to come along to your, hey, I'm going to put this race on. We're going to have all the F1 crew there. Yeah, it's not a championship race, but come and watch Jim Clark. And you have that pull of the name. Once you get to the 70s, 80s, and the sport has grown so much and the calendar's so big, and like you say, teams aren't going to want to risk with that. I've got Monaco in 2 weeks. You want me to go along to Brands Hatch and risk screwing this thing up? You can just see why it fell away. And like now you've got no chance. Now, what did it say? Today's closest equivalents of things that kind of still run are Goodwood's Festival of Speed, things like that, where they're not run to F1 specs, but
and they're not even
get
really
drivers
races.
turn up and some of them still do races at some of those tracks, but you're not getting. I mean, okay, Max turns up at the Nürburgring and does a lap under a different name, but he's not taking part in a race.
I mean, there is
you're not going to see that, right?
There is a race of champions. Sometimes it's on snow up in Sweden or Finland when Valtteri was in it, and then in Australia. And yeah, that's a race of champions, but it's never in like an F1 car anymore. It's always in some other vehicle, and they're doing something, or it's in old cars or something. It's always different. Like you said, old F1 cars for Goodwood and other places, tire tests, but they're closed to the public, and they're not really races. It's usually the tire tests are one car at a time or limited amount out there. So, yeah, I think honestly, the answer is probably money. It's money filled the calendar. Money has created expensive cars. Money allows for testing. Money is what people pay 24 times a year to promoters. Money, all of it.
So
it may not be
thought,
directly money, but if you trace it back indirectly, it's all money.
Just on one little thought that you just said, though. So let's forget the cost cap, because that money aspect could absolutely shoot stake right through the heart of my suggestion here. But do you think they could bring non-championship races back? Because actually, you said testing. They don't too much testing. It's such a limited testing window at the moment. For some
Right.
reason, they're scared of letting too many people have too much testing. I think testing is a good thing. I think we would get convergence quicker if all teams could test more. But imagine setting up a non-championship series of races that may even occur on the same weekend as a regular Grand Prix, but the teams are sending their reserve drivers along, or keep one. I mean, these teams have all got like a gazillion reserve drivers, so you keep one reserve driver. Valtteri goes to the weekend just in case he's needed, but all the other reserve drivers go and take part in a non-championship race. You would be able to bring F1 machinery to the public that can't afford to go and watch a proper Grand Prix, because you'd never charge as much money for one of these as you could for a proper one. Can you imagine going along to I don't know, pick a track that everyone wants to get. You could use it as a test to bring some of the old tracks back before they're ready for the F1 Canada. Imagine going to Portugal, going to what's it called, Estoril or Port. That one, yeah.
That's the one I like in Portugal, Portimao.
So imagine going there with F1 cars with reserve drivers for a non-championship race. And like I said, I know cost cap probably kills my idea, but would you be up? Could you see it as a thing that would be enough room for, enough desire from the public to say, I know this isn't an F1 race, but it's the closest I'm going to get to seeing these cars go around track.
Here's the problem. It's not even the cost cap. I think the other problem is we have an opportunity to have a guest on in the future, and maybe a duo. We'll see if we can get both, but one of them works in F1. And part of the conversation we want to learn from this potential guest is the idea that says, what is the toll on the family of part of it is what is the toll of being in F1 in the circus and not being home. So we already have 24 races and testing. I get your point. Other drivers, figure out the cost cap, but to run an F1 car, you need a whole team still. You need mechanics.
There you go. I'm going to drive up employment because you can't expect the same team to support the F1 and the non-championship. So now I've created jobs by bringing in more people.
You get
a
second team.
Championship.
A second team.
That helps teams then also train. I've got this new guy. He's not that great on the pit stops, but I think he might have some potential. So I'm going to train him up in the non-championship races, see how he gets on.
Maybe.
And if he can change a tire in under 2 seconds,
you're going to need a much different cost cap. Much different cost cap situation.
Like I said, cost cap has to go out the window here. And maybe non-championship cars and teams and people that support it don't come under the F1 cost cap. There we go. Solved it.
I mean, it's not a bad idea. I'd like to see it. Could we even, dare I say, reduce the overall amount of races to 20? And then have like 10 non-championship races where, you're forced to not use your A and B drivers, but you have to use reserve, and it's more testing time. Now, if you get a second team, you're balancing it better amongst the mechanics, everybody, the pit wall, the drivers. Your cars get, to your point, convergence faster because you learn more throughout the season. When new regs start, it's, maybe you start off on the back foot, but you're caught up. Because as we all know, all you got to do is just change your car for chaos, for battle. Build it for battle.
Just one little swirly thing on the floor.
Yeah, we'll put a swirly on the side floor and we're ready for battle. Sorry, I still love that movie. And then, there's an opportunity. But, man, you've really got to manufacture it to make that work. We struggled with figuring out sprint races, and that's on the same weekend with the same people. How are we going to do a whole other set of races at tracks?
No, I'd
they
say
got to
that's a
have safety
issue.
Stuff at the tracks. They got to promote it.
Issue.
Yeah.
Oh, you'd find people. Can you imagine? I think this is a gold mine. I think it's an absolute genius gold mine just waiting to be tapped into. There's so many tracks out there that are on the verge of maybe being fit for purpose for an F1 weekend, but they can't get the revenue in. They need to prove the tracks out. So you'd have these non-championship races, get the public in. They'd be in there. You'd give paddock passes to everyone because it's not an F1 race.
Right.
So everyone's free to come in and walk up and down the pit lane before the race starts.
Like IndyCar. Are you suggesting effectively IndyCar?
Yes, but in F1 cars, and it's a feeder league to the championship. So it's that step. It stops these. Look at some of these rookies that make the jump from F2 to F1 and just get chewed up and spat out by the machine, right? Give them a non-pressure environment to learn their craft in an F1 car under the non-championship circuit.
Mick and Nick. We could have Mick and Nick, the battle of Mick Schumacher and Nick de Vries.
Exactly. All these drivers that are all kind of running around just trying to get a seat. We'd open up another, if you mimic it, and we get another 11 teams. We've got 22 slots that just open up. I'm telling you, dirty side, non-championship series. That's what needs to happen. We need people out there with money to come and make it happen. We'll find the tracks. We'll promote it on this pod. Get in touch. This is genius.
Actually, it's not a bad idea. Can I ask for one thing, though, in all seriousness? Le Mans
No,
style
they can't
start.
make a car big enough for you to fit in to drive
Oh,
around.
damn it. A Le Mans style start where they all start across the track, run over to their car, jump in, and go. There's something to that for me. Like the fastest at buckling your seatbelts and getting in the car wins a little bit of track. I mean, that's great.
Like, here I am putting forward a legitimate business venture, which is like the spirit of these non-championship races that we've just spent the last 40 minutes talking about, is run to the same spec as the main one so you could seamlessly move across. If you get Mick Schumacher into our Dirty Side non-championship series and he nails it of being the fastest sprinter and buckler of seatbelts, how's that going to help him get back into F1?
My ideas are so good they don't even need explanation.
There's no comeback on that.
And on that bombshell,
Yeah.
what else you got on the non-championships before we close it out?
Nothing really. I look at this and think, as with a lot of things, it's always through the eyes of nostalgia, and think it's a shame that something like this existed and no longer exists, and we're consigned to reading articles about how it was great and now it's disappeared. But we do have a lot of races, and I'm torn because
That's why I said less. If you're going to do
argue
this,
there's
you
too
need less.
many.
Yeah.
Could there be a happy medium where you, like you say, shorten the calendar down to 20 and bring some non-championship races back to give more access to people? Yeah, we could, but the other point you made is going to kill it. Money.
It's all money.
There's way more money in running 24, 25, or 26, according to me last week on the episode artwork.
Do you know who would not like your idea? F2. They already have something. I know it's different cars, but junior drivers, opportunities to show things. F2.
No, that complements it. It becomes the next stepping stone. It gives you
F2,
all those
F1.5?
F2 drivers, all those F2 drivers that are all swirling around trying to go after seats that don't exist in F1. So they get spat out by the F2, because aren't you only allowed to stay in F2 for so long as well?
And if you win or certain things, you got to move on.
Yeah. So we are creating something to fill that void of, look, your career doesn't end here. Okay, yes, you haven't secured your F1 seat, but you can come along and drive in the non-championship series and just bide your time, show your talent. Hey, maybe, oh my gosh, genius idea now. I'm merging my two sports together. So if I take an idea from the world of...
You're gonna relegate Sauber to non-championship?
Yes, no, not the team, the drivers. So...
What?
Whoever wins, there is a race-off. There is a race-off at the end of the season of the two drivers at the bottom of the World Drivers' Championship have to take part in a head-to-head with the top two drivers from the non-championship series. Maybe more, because 4 cars would be a bit boring, but I've still got to work out the finer details. But yes, there is a race-off, and if you win the race-off, you take that guy's seat.
All right. We're grasping at straws. We hope you enjoyed this
We're
episode.
not. I think this is the best idea ever.
All right. You hold on to that idea there, Slick. Anything else you'd like to say to the listeners before we let them have some time back and we get ready for next week's episode?
No, because I'm too busy now thinking of this new business venture to launch this new race series. So
All right, call me.
I got nothing.
When you can afford my salary, call me. But until then, I don't want to hear from you.
Who
That's
says
been
that
the
you'd be invited?
What do you say?
Who said that you would be invited?
That's what I said. You got to call me.
You've just rained all over my parade,
did.
so you're not allowed.
Because of money. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really enjoyed learning more about the non-championship races, when they happened, who drove them, why they were around. Rob wants to bring them back, and I would say, nah, that's whack. But thank you for listening. We will talk to you in 1 week's time with another set of made-up content, but an opportunity to talk about Zandvoort. We'll see you in a week, everybody. Be well.